Hello, everyone. Today I am joined by Bryce, the CEO, if you will, of Overbound Game Studios. By CEO, I mean sole proprietor. I mean the everything of Overbound Game Studio. Most of you probably know him as Overbound. If you know him, you probably know him for Sonic Time Twisted, very good Sonic fan game, and the game he's working on now called No More Robots. Did I get all that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so I just want to sort of start from the beginning. If we're just to talk about games and game development. So, like, what made you want to get into just games in general before even game development? Like, what's your earliest thing of? Because to make games first, you have to like games. So, how did you come to like video games?
Do you? I don't know if that's true.
Well, I'd hope so. If you don't want to be miserable,
I guess I don't have a great answer to that because I don't remember. And the reason I don't remember is because I was probably like 3 years old.
So they've just always been a part of your life.
Yeah, I just always did. And I didn't get a video game system until I was like, I think maybe 8 or so. And it was a Genesis. And so I like that very much. But before that, I was trying to make games out of cardboard. And so it was just always a part. And I think.
So wait, you're making games out of cardboard? You mean like board games type of thing?
No, I mean, like being a 3-year-old, what do? You like cut a piece of cardboard and you glue a screen on it and you make pretend buttons, and
that's awesome. You're like, being a 3-year-old as you do. Like, I never did that on the screen. That's pretty cool.
Might have been a little older. I really don't remember. Maybe 4, maybe 5. It's, who has memories of that?
Yeah.
Long ago.
Dang, you're ahead of your time, man. So the Sonic cartoons came before the Genesis?
Mm-hmm. I really liked Fat AM, and I really liked Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog too. So I watched both of those a lot, and
nice.
From that,
cool. So the Sonic love goes deep.
I probably watched Mario cartoons before that, and I was quite into those. But they were on this channel called the Family Channel, which is like this 1980s cable channel.
Heck yeah,
1990s, dude. Really. But I used to always watch those. I think before the Sonic ones even, but that memory is even fuzzier. So,
well, that's great. When did you actually start commaking, computer games, non-cardboard, non-Nintendo Labo?
I got a computer when I was maybe 10, and I found a lot of Sonic fan websites. There was some other fan pages and stuff, and but Sonic HQ was really the big one for me. I looked at Sonic Stadium a little bit too. Back then, Sonic Stadium had this weird setup where they were actually hosted on a bunch of Angel Fire websites, and they were separate websites because they had so much on their website that it couldn't contain it all.
To get around the hosting.
Yeah. So it was weird, but I always thought that was neat when I was a kid.
I love that.
They worked around it that way.
Angel Fire, let's go.
Yeah, so around that time, I got really into the fan gaming scene, and I found I think Sonic Robo Blast. Really understand.
First one?
Yeah, the first one.
Nice.
And I figured out how they made their game, which was with Click Team,
and
I found out about Game Factory. So I started in that. Worked in that for about a year, and then after that, a friend of mine showed me Game Maker, and I started using Game Maker. So I was probably really 11, 12 when I really started getting into programming and making games.
That's awesome, man. That's a ripe young age.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Cool, man.
Yeah, I remember downloading Game Maker 3.3, and then 4.0 came out just a little bit after that.
The Mark over Mars days, man. You remember all those demo games like the Pac-Man and the car driving and the 1945, the default explosion, everything you could want.
So, I was making this game. Well, I made this game called Goomba's Revenge with a guy named Dwarf's Quest, which had these Dwarf's Quest games. We made 1 and we made 2. And the way we did it was we just emailed each other back and forth. Because
the source?
Yeah, the source code. And so he'd take it for a couple weeks and I'd take it for a couple weeks.
I love that. Who needs GitHub?
It was really fun. I was disappointed at the end because he said he didn't hear from me for like 3 weeks, so he just went ahead and released it. And I had been working on like so many bug fixes for it and stuff, and I was like, oh man. But yeah, that was kind of a bummer. But it's all good. The bummer though is that game, the revised one or the original, I don't think anybody can find anywhere. I don't think they exist anymore.
Oh no.
Goomba's Revenge 2 is what it was, and the first one you can find. But
a sequel. Watch out.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you're playing as a Goomba?
Yeah, you're playing as a little Goomba, and you just, like, the first one's very basic, like Mario and Luigi are running around the levels, and you just jump on them once, and they die. And if you get touched, you die, and the level restarts. But we made,
that's like, a gameplay loop. That counts.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we made, like, there were a couple bosses too where like you had to jump on them multiple times, but
watch out.
I think we made like 20 levels or something. It was quite a few. And then we made that second one, which had a lot more in it. It had like different power-ups. It had like flying power-ups where you could be the wing Goomba, and like fire flower power-ups. And I don't even remember them all, but it was so many. I feel like if like, I don't hold anything against this guy. We were super young, but I feel like if he had just hung on for a couple of weeks, that game would have been way better received and people would remember it better today. But oh well,
yeah,
stuff happens.
Hey, heck yeah, man. I mean, like, what year are we talking? Like 01? Like
probably 02, 03.
203. Yeah. I mean, if you're out there making games in 02, 03, I think you're already ahead of the curve, man. And you talking about boss fights, like, watch out, man. Like, that's pretty awesome. Okay, let me pop in here for a quick edit. This is Goomba's Revenge you're seeing on screen right now. I had no idea during our conversation that I have played this game. I remember this game. This is the game. I played it a lot when I was a kid, and I had no idea that my friend Bryce made it all those years ago before we even knew each other. How crazy is that? All right, back to the thing. Yeah, my first game was also a Mario fan game, but for some reason, you scrolled from right to left instead of left to right, and I have no idea why. I don't know if I thought
Maybe
it was
the
cool.
first thing you got working.
Probably, yeah. I figured out how to make a move left before, so I just stuck with it. That checks out. So when did Sonic Time Twisted come on? How long? Now you worked on that game for like 1,000 years. Like,
I mean, the game started taking shape in probably 2004 or 5. I think I had my first public release in 2005. There was a little bit of demo before that where I was like making this Sonic Adventure style, because that was really the trend back then. There was a sprite called the Rabid Knuckles sprite or something. Rabid Knuckles? I don't know.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like a Genesis style adventure looking sprite, and everybody was using that.
It's sprite. Like taller, redder Knuckles, purple eyes.
Or no, it was a Sonic. Like the name of the person who made it was like Rabid Knuckles.
Yeah, I think he made a Knuckles sprite too that I'm picturing.
I'm pretty sure he did make one to go with it, but I don't have a clear memory of what that one looked like in my head.
This is old school.
Anyway,
I love it.
I made it with that, and I had like E101 as the bad guy, and I like did my first explosions, and, like got the jump working and stuff. But
is that version still out there?
No, it's not.
Dang it! I was wanting footage of it right now to be rolling by. It's great.
Yeah, I don't think it's still out.
I'm finding those Rabid Knuckles sprites though. I'm making that.
Well, they are probably still out there.
They're
probably still on.
Now, how many years? So that's like 2004 or 5. What year did the finished version of Time Twisted come out?
2017.
2017. Okay, so there's a lot in between that. What happened?
Well, I remade the game a couple times. Had some different engines come and go.
Now, engines as in frameworks or engine as in Game Maker versus something else?
Frameworks, yeah, like Sonic frameworks. Like I started with just like a really basic 360 engine. Then I went to something called the Xmas engine. I ended up using one by Vector Satire, or Aero GP as he was known at the time.
Yeah. Started with some Damazine hype and then went to
Yeah.
Aero GP. Oh yes, these are all good names. This is so inside baseball right now for anyone that's been part of the Sonic fan game for the longest we have. We're like, yep, got it, checked it out. If you're not, you're like, nah, I don't know those names. That don't make any sense. Well, that's great. I love
Yeah,
every
I
part of
guess
that.
so.
So would you like get the game? You'd be making it. You'd be like, all right, we're going somewhere, and then be like, nah, let's just start over. And then you start from scratch, and you go in and you make it. You're like, nah, let's just start over. Is that basically how you describe it?
Well, in 2008, I made this demo. It was kind of rushed and like, it was based on the original engine, and like fan games had been like evolving a little bit. So like the physics were a little bit better and stuff, a little bit more accurate. And like that was around when like Nexus and XG were
Ooh,
really big.
tough competition.
And so I decided,
Christian Whitehead, no big deal.
yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. And so and also from the website you're from, or one of them anyway, the Supersonic Zone, TSSZ.
Yes,
Right.
I did write for them for a time. Yes.
Well, so Blaze wrote this like really scathing review, and so I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna get really angry. And
For context, Blaze refers to Ryan Bloom, who started the Sonic Image Games Expo and also still to this day does write-ups of Sonic fan games on his site and for TSSC for a long time before it shut down. So carry on.
yeah, that guy. And so he wrote kind of like, whoa, this game ain't keeping up with the times, basically. Review.
I want to ask him
like,
about that. That's funny.
You're a big butthole, and I don't like you because you're being mean to my game.
Yeah.
And so, as you do as, a teenager, and I eventually got over it, though, and remade the game. And that version was pretty good, but it wasn't like the physics weren't perfect. The physics now are pretty good and time twisted. And so I switched engines one more time. And in between there, I also thought about using, or briefly used, Mercury's engine, which it was never really in a state where I could like take advantage of it as a full game engine, mostly because I wasn't that great a programmer at the time. And Mercury, who is a guy who originally made the Sonic Physics guide and also the game Sonic Fan Remix, the engine for it.
Those are big contributions, man.
Yeah, he's a really smart dude. He was using some really advanced like programming concepts that at the time I didn't understand. So it was really hard to use his stuff. And so eventually, after some debate, I ended up going with AeroGP's engine. Although what Mercury was working on was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I have no doubt. It's a very smart man. Now, he made the 3D special stage engine for Time Twisted. Is that right? Or was that someone else?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, that was him.
There you go. The idea of the eternal chase for more accurate Sonic physics, only for something new to come out and start over, is something that even I experienced in making Triple Trouble, which started in 2017. You started talking about 2004. I could only imagine, because at the time I had Flicky, but then stuff like Sonic GMS came out. Orbinaut, I think, is really, really good. Even Flicky's been replaced and evolved into the Harinazume. I don't remember how you say it. It's the Japanese word for hedgehog. But I still get some complaints about the physics in Triple Trouble. But I'm like, I could have started over a new engine, but I wanted to get that game done at some point. So
if you get complaints about the physics, that's just like,
I think it's pretty minuscule at this point. It's basically there, right? Like
basically all the fan games now, they grab the right angles, apply the right speeds to everything, and they all use the 4 quadrants. Like you have a left
wall, top wall.
Yeah, and so they're pretty much all the same anymore.
Yeah,
there's some minuscule differences where people decided to implement one thing this way instead to improve on the classics, or they did it this way, like Sonic 2 instead of Sonic 3 or whatever.
Yeah, you bring up a good point.
Come on.
The chase for perfect Sonic physics is kind of, at some point, futile considering what is perfect Sonic physics, because the classic games don't even agree on that. What happens in CD is different. Even what happens in Sonic CD on Sega CD versus Sonic CD on the Windows port has a slight difference. But yeah, any Sonic fan game now has more Genesis physics than Sonic 4 did. And that's an official title. So I think we're doing great, right?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I do understand
there is one
the
thing
progression
in Time
of that.
Twisted, though, that like you can walk up walls more easier. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but it is easier to walk up walls in Time Twisted.
Was that an intentional thing or just a side effect?
I didn't really notice at first, but then I did notice, and I just was like, I think this is all right, actually.
You're like, it's fine. It's fine. It'll be good.
Because I mean, I designed the whole game to like basically use that with that expectation, so I didn't want to like start tweaking things.
Yeah, that's the other thing too.
Levels.
Is like if there's inaccuracies in your physics, design around them. I mean, that's kind of my whole like school of game design is if you run into some sort of technical issue, see if you can just design around it.
Yeah,
it's like I mean, that's sort of, you know, in a way that's gaming, like game development 101. If you're talking back in the days when you're dealing with like an NES, like Mega Man was supposed to originally be red, but they changed it to blue because the NES had more blue colors in the color palette. So they just designed around it. If you design for whatever your physics engine is, I think that works. There's a couple of I can't remember what it was, but there's a certain kind of slope that you don't see that much in my game, particularly because the physics engines was kind of finicky with it. And I'm like, I'll just avoid that slope. It's not essential. It doesn't break the game if this one kind of slope is in there. Dang. So
now you got me trying to remember all the different types of slopes.
I think the one for me was the one where it's sort of a little half pipe ramp. Like think it at the start of Emerald Hill Zone Act 1. That little one would throw a little fits. So what I would have I couldn't just do a little like half pipe. I'd have to give it a little extra height above it, and then it would work fine. They're even finicky in a little bit in Sonic 2, though. So
yeah.
So to be fair, I'm just going for Genesis accurate. Cool. With Time Twisted, the final version comes out in 2017, but you had restarted it a couple times. When did the quote unquote final version start development?
There's not like a fine line because, I mean, I even reused some stuff from my earliest builds, but I ditched the Xmas engine or the Dash engine around 2000, after 2010. And so then for a while there, I just focused on making levels. I didn't really have an engine for a couple of years. I sort of had, for a while, Mercury would give me things intermittently, and I'd use those a little bit. But 2013, 14 maybe, I got the final engine and then put together the game in like 3 years.
Okay, cool. So did you design all the levels yourself?
A lot of them, most of them. Shane used to go by Sparks. Shane Sparks, I guess.
Kyle and Lucy's developer.
Yeah. He also worked on Sonic Zero. He did one of the layouts for Radical Runes. Maybe he did both of them. I think he did both of them. But only the past variation. I did the future.
Cool. Now, you agree with me on this. Sonic level design is very hard. True or false?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, it's hard to think of new things to put in there. That's my biggest thing. I can't design a level very fast. I have to do it slow. Designing levels is what I'm really struggling with for No More Robots right now because of the 2.5D nature, and I think they're going to end up being simpler vertically than Time Twisted, but like they'll have that 2.5D walk into the background aspect, so.
Which is certainly a challenge.
Triple Trouble's levels are pretty good though, right? Like, I thought you did a good job making them feel like Sonic 3, and I feel like they're a little bit. It might be a little bit more populated and feel a little bit more explored than Time Twisted. I think you probably did a better job than I did with level design.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you.
Of course, I mean, in my defense, though, I had to make levels for like 2 versions.
Yeah, you have to do the time zones.
Yeah, but I felt like your levels were really polished. Probably the most polished in any 2D fan game that I played, probably.
Wow. Well, thank you. I appreciate that because that was a lot of hard work and a lot of research to try to get those levels where they needed to be. That's why I said true or false if Sonic levels design was hard, because I feel like it is crazy. I don't think Hirokazu Yasuhara gets enough credit. He has such a unique level design style. And I mean, Sonic 1, 2, 3, those are like some of the first games he ever worked on. And he just goes into it and just creates this style that's so unique, and it's people have struggled to replicate, even official games. You know, I mean, it took Sonic Mania 20 years after the fact before we actually got it again.
Sonic Mania is doing something different. I feel like you captured it closer.
Wow. Okay. I'll take that.
Because like Sonic Mania is like really got this like flow to it, and it's almost like too flowy, like it's like constant flow state. At least from what I remember, it's been a while since I played it. But I feel like for the most part, they kind of forgot about the platforming aspect too much. I still think yeah. I mean, it's been a long time since I played it, so I don't remember that well. But I feel like I just remember feeling like those levels felt a little bit more modern, a little bit more roller coastery than like the classic series. Like whereas your levels had like a lot of like how do you want to say it?
More like stop and platformy exploration type things.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I was constantly worried that my levels were too roller coastery and too much of that.
No, I think you got the right amount in there.
Okay, well that's great. Thank you, man. I'm kind of curious. So, level design sort of something you just sort of taught yourself, right?
Yeah.
What is sort of your like background coming into this? Do you have like a art background or a musician background or a computer science background, like formally in terms of like education or anything?
Well, I was a graphic designer for a few years, probably about 5 years, but I never went to school for it or anything. I just worked at like print shops and sign shops and stuff like that, and made like graphics for cars. Like you see those wraps on cars, like when they're wrapped and there's like a big advertisement on them, and the whole car is just like one big ad.
Yeah,
so, like I do those kind of things, signs for stores and flames on cars sometimes and stuff like that.
Oh wow! So I surely imagine that I'm thinking that surely like working on graphic design and that type of thing, learning that skill had to have been informing your game development and vice versa, because there's a lot of, I think, those sort of visual aesthetic principles that apply in a lot of areas of game development.
Yeah, that's true. I don't have like any specific thing I use other than like the golden rule, and I'm really more of a tool-based guy. So like I know Illustrator very well, I know Photoshop very well, I know how to program pretty good.
I mean, you use Photoshop for pixel art, right?
Yeah, I made all those tutorials and things way back when. So but all that started with the game. Like, why do I know Photoshop? It's not because I was a graphic designer. It's because I was making pixel art. Why do I know Illustrator? It's because I'm trying to make logos for my game.
Yeah.
I walked into a graphic design shop one day, and they were like, well, sit down and create a logo for us. And I was like, okay. So I made them one, and then I got a job, and that's how I became a graphic designer.
Oh, that's incredible. I love that story. That's so good.
Thanks.
We both finished a Sonic fan game and are now working on our own original game. What I think is interesting is that we're both sort of kind of doing a similar thing. Now, your game is No More Robots. My game is unannounced at the time of this recording. But they're both sort of taking Sonic-like movement, slopes and physics and that type of thing, but adding combat to it and putting emphasis on player versus enemy combat. I believe yours is very Smash Bros. Styled. So what I'm curious about is, why do you think we both landed to that? We both finished a Sonic fan game and then go to Sonic plus combat. Now, I have my ideas of why I did it, but I'm curious, like, what you think, why you were drawn to that.
I think it's just kind of a natural progression. Like Sonic is a really fast game, and like if you think about other like really fast action games like Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, or I've been playing Ninja Gaiden lately. There's a lot of like fast combat in those games, and something like that I think feels like a natural fit for Sonic, because I mean we're not the first ones to do that. So I forget the name of it, but I think it was made by a guy named Pedro, but there was this old Sonic fan game that had pretty complicated brawler physics in it. Or not physics, combat in it. But it was just like running around and playing as Sonic 2. So, I think it's just natural.
Did you ever play Sonic Mecha Madness?
That's the one.
That's the one. Okay, there you go. Yeah, I remember playing that. It was like a demo, but I remember thinking that was pretty fun. That you could just put. It's literally Smash Bros. Combat in that case. Like it's Sonic's moveset from Smash put in there. And so I always thought that was really cool and wanted to sort of.
Do you remember who made that game?
I don't. It's like, is it like Thunderstrike Studios or something? I bet I could find it pretty quick. Okay. I don't know if this is who made it, but there's a video on YouTube that says Sonic Mecha Madness release with the link to it from Streak Thunderstorm.
That's the guy. He's the one that like was showing off like for 10 years. He always show off that one Metal Sonic model.
Yes, that's the guy. Cool. Well, that's funny. So we both sort of were inspired by that and sort of went to that natural progression. For me, I think Spider-Man played a big influence in that. I don't know if you've played the PS4 Insomniac game, but I've always sort of thought of Sonic and Spider-Man already as similar characters sort of spiritually. They both have this like desire to help others. They both like to make funny little quips as they're jumping around, beating bad guys, that type of thing. There's that line in SA2 that Shiro Madokawa basically riffed off a line from the Spider-Man animated series. The talk about low budget flights, no footer movies, I'm out of here. So I've always been in that similarity. So when you're playing Insomniac Spider-Man, the main two modes of that game are sort of traversal, all the parkour, running off walls and zipping around, and then going into hand-to-hand combat going around. So to me, that sort of fluidity sort of makes sense. But I'm curious if are you ever afraid that you might run into the issue of the fact that combat involves staying in one place where the enemies are, and that Sonic speed involves moving quickly? Have you ever run into that sort of conflict where the player just runs past the enemy or anything like that?
Well, if the player wants to run past the enemy, I feel like that's their prerogative. They can do that if they want.
Oh, you're perfectly okay with that.
Yeah, but I do have like not walled off areas, because I don't really like walled off areas per se, but I have, well, I guess I do have walled off areas.
You have like sections where the camera locks and then it's just fight these guys and then the camera unlocks type of thing?
No. I have there's some bad guys have keys. And so if you want to go through certain doors, you're going to have to fight them. So there's that aspect. There's also a lot of enemies around. And you also, if you want to level up, you need to fight the enemies.
That was my other question is, do they give you any sort of XP or anything by fighting them? Yeah,
they do. You level up and get XP. The sword gets longer. Your attack gets stronger, and you have more defense, or your health bar gets longer. Really, those are main ways those are the main ways you can level up.
Cool, nice. Do you have sort of? I'm curious how much like planning and organization you do. Do you have like a master plan for No More Robots in terms of like how many levels you want to see and like what types of like the biomes or anything? Like, where are you with that?
Well, I have like, I don't know, 4 or 5 sketchbooks full of like character designs and level ideas, boss fights, and enemy types and stuff like that. So plenty of that. I think there'll probably be about 5 worlds and maybe like 3 levels in each world, but there's an overworld too, because it's like a spoken hub type game. It's not really a platformer in the sense of there is a little bit of platforming, but it's not really the challenge of the game. It's more like just an exploratory game, a little bit more like Paper Mario, where you're like wandering through a world and collecting things to progress the story.
Okay, so is it like sort of an open environment, or they're like levels with like a signpost at the end type of thing?
I'm not planning on cutting to black anytime, just like I didn't with Time Twisted. But God
of War 2018 up in here. I did the same thing with Triple Trouble. I found it to be a nightmare to make everything seamless like that. But carry on.
Yeah, it is. It is, but it's worth it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so there'll be like levels, but they'll be very tied into the over. There's like a forest town, and there's like a more mountainy area, and
but it's all connected.
Spaceship, and yeah.
Is it sort of Metroidvania-esque in sense of the terms of the map? Like there's no like end to levels. They sort of just all feed into each other.
I don't have the end of the levels like the graphics and everything planned yet, but the plan is to do signposts. So, and what I mean are street signs actually. So like they'll really tie into the theme of the game where like you pass a street sign and that's the end of the level, basically.
Okay, cool. So you're not doing any backtracking or anything?
There'll be some backtracking, like insofar as you can replay the levels, and you'll need to find different, or if you miss some collectibles and things like that, you might want to go back for them. But not like you have to replay the levels.
When you replay the level, does it fade to black, or do you have to organically go back to the start of it?
I don't have that figured out yet.
Ooh.
That's a good question.
This is fun. I'm trying to wrap my mind around this master plan of yours. So are the levels somewhat linear then? Or are they sort of open-ended?
They're linear. They have a start and end, and they have multiple paths through them. But those multiple paths are more split up in 3D, right? As opposed to Sonic games because of the back and forth out of the Z-axis. Yeah. They're always right to left, but you can go into the background and out of the background. Nice. It's not like something like Bud's Mutants or anything where it's more like or that one Wario Land game for the Virtual Boy. It's more like Yoshi's Crafted, like where you just walk into the background. I actually bought that game because I was like, oh, that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
Oh, yeah. You buy a lot of games specifically for like, I have to figure out X problem. Let's look at this game.
That's the only reason I play games.
I'm done with pleasure. It's all business. That's funny. Yeah.
All my hobbies are just forms of work.
That's funny. Hardworking guy. Yeah, I've definitely caught myself buying games. About to buy some games right now. Anything that has, because my game is going to be kind of team based. Ninja Turtles asked.
Team, yeah.
Anything where you can play as a team, like I'm like looking at it. You know, I'm like, all right, ooh, Guardians of the Galaxy, let's take a look at that type of thing. Is every level sort of feeding into each other? Like you finish this level and now you're in this level and then now you're in this level that eventually you're in the mountain region and that type of thing?
There's some levels. It's more like a hub and spoke type setup. In the forest town, there's a diner. And so you spend a lot of time in the diner and then like you hang around in the town and do some missions and talk to like all the NPCs, and then you can go to a level as you unlock it.
Okay, and if you beat the level, are you back at the diner?
Yeah.
But without a fade button?
Not exactly in the diner, but like you're just back in the town. Or if it's a level that takes you to like, because like you figure the last level in each world will take you to the next.
Okay. So every sort of world has like a central diner thing, and then there's different paths to different levels, linear levels throughout of it. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Trying to wrap my head around this wicked game you're crafting in that noggin of yours. Oh, Bryce. Cool. I love that. So much. So you mentioned you have scrapbooks full of a lot of characters. Is that typically where you start with making games, just with character first?
In this case, yeah, because like it's like I started working on the character design when I was still working on Time Twisted, because I didn't want to start programming, although I did start programming before I finished Time Twisted, but for the most part I didn't want to, and so I would do character design.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I definitely have was started working on my original game in periods where I was working on Triple Trouble, and I was sort of fed up and frustrated. Just as a palate cleanser, it'd be good to sort of dabble on that for a little bit and sort of go back and type of thing. And before anyone asks, that's not why the game took 5 years. It took 5 years because it was really hard to make. But I think it would have taken
5 years because it took 5 years.
Yeah, I think it would have taken longer if I hadn't had those short little breaks. And we're talking like just like a day or so to dabble on something else and that type of thing. Do you think of level ideas in isolation? Do you think of mechanics and then those mechanics inform what kind of levels were in that? Is there any sort of approach you take there?
Well, I mean, I'm still developing all the mechanics, so I'm sort of developing the levels along with them.
So sort of an organic process like that.
Yeah. I always hear one thing developers say a lot is like game design is like a bunch of little tweaks, right? So I definitely agree with that. And I'm just constantly tweaking what I'm doing. It's really, I've never made combat before. So it's really challenging to get exactly what I want. And it's taking a lot of time and a lot of study and everything. But I'm close. I think I'm getting close on that. So
Yeah. And that's been also fun to swap notes with you because I think we're running into a lot of the same issues with figuring out how combat works because it's pretty involved. And, history goes back to just to fighting games, and we know how technical those can get. And so revolving from that, there's so many aspects to, you think it's so simple. It's just like you press a button and you punch or you slice. And then it's like, there's all this stuff about combos, input windows, and balancing attacks that are heavier than others and all that sort of madness. So combat is a challenge.
Gaming or game programming in general, I think, is one of the more difficult things to program, just because of like the fact that, like, if you're working in like IT or something like that and you're developing a system, usually it's like got an input and an output, and it's very like do this one time then move on. Or you've got an application that's like wait for the person to click this button. But in game design, you're really trying to simulate a whole world, and the world works, and you have to think about the game loop a lot more than you do like an application loop usually, or a service loop. So that paradigm of like code constantly running. I'm not even sure I'm using the word paradigm right, but it sounded smart, so I'll go with it.
I'll go with it.
Code constantly running and just constantly checking every aspect of everything your game needs to do 60 times a second. Like, it's a lot more challenging than some of the other types of programming you can do.
Yeah, so I used to work on a lot of films before I did game design, and that is something that I do miss about film, is that film is the same every time. The camera's rolling, you'll do several takes, but you just have to have it just do it right once, and that take is done. That take will live on forever. We don't ever have to replicate that. We don't have to worry about like, okay, what if we come into this scene, but the audience hasn't saw this scene beforehand or that scene? It's never variable like that. You don't have to worry about what kind of upgrades the audience has that they're bringing into the scene. It's all just a straight path. You do it once and it's done. But like you said, in games, you're simulating a world, and you've got to factor all that in. There's sort of, I think, a spectrum in game design of, on one side is just complete, just open simulation, and the other side is very sort of what I call roller coaster, linear and samey, the same type of thing, and then sort of where you slide on that spectrum from time to time. And games can go back and forth on that spectrum a lot, but even the most linear and scripted games you can think of still have to account for so many more variables than a book or a movie or an IT website application have to worry about. And so that's the challenge of games for sure. How do you deal with like motivation or inspiration for making games? Because when you're doing it by yourself, I find that really hard to stay motivated. I think if there was, in a weird way, if there was like a publisher breathing down your neck, I feel like in some ways it would kind of just force you to get it together.
Yeah, I mean, I only have so much time I can dedicate because I have like full-time job too. And I know you work too, so that's probably a challenge for you as well. But I mean, I just want to do it, so I find the motivation. But I do take breaks. I've been working a lot on like my YouTube channel, GameFAQs Special, which of course you've been on a couple times, and that's a good breather because it's like it's so linear, and you can get something done, and you don't have to hope that you get it done. It just happens because it's.
You don't put out the video and then go like, oh crap, if you watch it at double speed, this part doesn't trigger or anything. It's like the video plays once and we're good.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm in a place now where I have like this pretty solid engine for No More Robots. I actually hooked up with another developer whose name is Sylvia Fox. Sylvia Fox has been helping me with programming, and I think I'm going to find another programmer now that I have like this framework of a game and money to spend, I guess. I can like find developers that will work with me and do what I need them to do. And so in the next couple weeks, I'm going to find another developer and really try to like push a lot of things forward by hiring people and doing more supervising stuff and focusing on the creative myself. Knowing that I have to make sure all the code is very sound and I'll have to do a lot of programming and stuff to get it all together in the base game. But I'm going to try to outsource a lot. And so that will help with my motivation too, because the creative stuff's way better than the programming stuff. I don't even like programming that much, to be honest with you. It's fine.
Does anyone? Nah, some people do. There is a certain tactileness about programming, is that once you fix the problem, it appears instantly. Where it's like with something more creative, you never know if you've done the right thing because there isn't an objective right. You know, you're just sort of like drawing a character until.
Well, but I don't even feel that way. I can't even agree with you there because I like don't even know what the right is. Like I get what you mean from like a programming standpoint, like you're trying to accomplish a goal. But as far as like game design goes and the creative of it, like the code that you have to write, and then like you test it out, you're like, oh, well, this works, does exactly what I said I wanted it to do, but actually I don't like this at all, so I'm just going to delete it all. And you know.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like the output of the numbers can be correct, even if even if it's not fun, you at least got the number part right. You know. Yeah,
that's true.
So that actually brings me to the question I had was what it's like working for like collaborators with you.
Well, you have to find the right ones. It's fun, I guess. I think I'm pretty. It's
fun, so like, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
Well, like I don't know how to answer that very well.
I mean, do you like having other people there to help you out, type of thing?
Well, originally, what I wanted to do was make the whole game myself. But I guess somewhere along the line, you know, I came to the realization that I'm never going to finish all this stuff myself. And this time, unlike last time, I have my own engine and my own state machine and my own input manager and all this stuff. So I can just work with other people, but still get the results I want because I have this engine. So I guess before I was very trepidatious about working with other people because I really wanted things the way I wanted them. But I feel like now that I have this framework, I can have other people do things for me, but still get the results I want because the source of the game, most of the game, is always going to be my source code, even if I have other people do certain aspects, like program a menu here or there, or a bad guy here or there, and things like that.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was getting at with asking about collaboration. Is it any part of it that's scary, or that you're worried about relinquishing any sort of control or authorship by?
I'm not going to do that. So like if it's not, I mean, because I'm keeping control of my source code. People work for me. They don't like. I'm not going to give. I definitely like. That's not to say I don't use people's ideas. Sylvia's had a bunch of cool ideas that she made a bunch of bosses or bad guys based on them, and so it's been cool. But at the end of the day, I'm calling the shots.
There you go.
It's not like a team effort. Well, I mean, it is. I'm very grateful.
But there's a clear director.
Yeah.
Which is you. You know.
I'm at the wheel. Yeah.
At the wheel. Heck yeah. You work much with artists at all? Are you doing most of the art yourself?
No, the art is the thing. Like I thought about making a comic book and getting an artist for that. I think the art is the thing that I like doing most, and it's like the thing that appears on the screen. Like nobody's like admiring your code when they're playing your game. Look at how clean this method structure is.
You don't even know how clean this for loop was under the hood.
Yeah, but they're always looking at the art and stuff, and so my thinking is now that I'm quote unquote an expert at Unity, I guess. Really, I can outsource a lot more of that stuff.
Nice.
Because I know, because any I can patch together any gaps.
Nice. Cool. If you need comic book artists, I highly recommend anyone that worked on the Triple Trouble tie-in comic. They're very, very talented.
Nice.
They pull that.
Maybe someday if I give up on art.
But even just to help, because there's penciling, inking, and coloring and all that stuff.
Yeah,
we turned that thing around in I think 10 days. Because it was a last minute idea I had right before the game launched, and I can't believe how quickly it just got together.
Yeah,
just absolute animals, just so good.
Right now, I'm trying to design all these characters, and it was a cartoon that became a comic book that's sort of evolving back into a cartoon, and so I'm trying to design all these characters for that too.
Do you have the whole story mapped out?
Of my comic?
Of just No More Robots in general. I guess separate stories, the comic and the game?
Yeah. That's something completely different. I have lots of ideas, I guess.
Oh, so the comic isn't a tie-in comic for No More Robots?
Oh, no.
Oh, I thought it was.
No, it's I'm making well, it'll probably be an animation, but I'm working on a concept called the Ghost King, and it's kind of Star Warsy. It's like a king who's a ghost, whose two children help him rule, a kingdom
via the afterlife.
Yes, via the afterlife. So I'm working on that, and my plan with that is I'm gonna get these character models done and do all the keyframing for the animation.
Oh, 3D animation.
No, keyframing for the animation, the 2D animation. Like Mickey Mouse. You draw pictures.
Yes, and I've heard of
flip them, and they appear to move.
Okay. Yes. Right. This is how this works.
I'm just giving you a bad time.
You mean keyframes? Is it manually drawing all the keyframes?
Right.
Wow. Okay. Dang. Cool. That's awesome.
But see, it sounds so. What I'm thinking is I'll animate on 4s, which is only 8 frames a second. So I could draw 2 frames, animate on 4s, and then give the other 4 frames to somebody else, and build a cartoon that way with 2 people or maybe a couple more people, but being able to keep make the designs myself and make a lot of the animation myself. And maybe once we get going, I can hand off more.
You ever think maybe
about kind of a pipe dream?
You ever think maybe about doing a motion comic?
Yeah, I've looked at those.
It's still comic booky, but it's not as intense as animation, but still plays as if it in real time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I've looked at those. I thought about that. I like the animation, the limited animation techniques that were used by Filmation and Hanna-Barbera and things like that. And a lot of animes too, right? There's a lot of limited techniques. One thing that Dragon Ball does is they'll draw 2 frames. They're almost exactly the same. And then they'll shake them like this.
Back and forth.
For 5 seconds or something. And so I'm thinking about okay, how can I make this thing really artistic, keep the animation low, and produce something really cool?
Yeah, what's good to be thinking ahead of time is economical, because I think that's an important skill people don't think about when it comes to actually getting things done.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it all works out, because I'm really ramping up all these ideas right now. So we'll see where I'm at in a year or 2.
Do you have the whole plan? I guess to answer the actual question now that I've properly understand the context. No, that was my bad for not understanding. Do you have the whole story mapped out for Ghost King?
No, I just have a lot of ideas. Most of I don't really map things out ahead of time, story-wise. I have a lot of ideas in my head, and they come and they go, but they always seem to come back when I need them. I don't want to spoil too much, but basically, I won't say any more than a character's sad and upset, and then all his friends show up basically, and they help him out in a way. And so I have all these scenes in my head of different things, and I have a lot of characters written down and things like that.
You just start stitching it together.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess I'm assuming then you don't have the story planned out for No More Robots then.
Well, I have like a lot of beats.
Mhm.
Like I know where it's going to end. I know like a lot of the like scenes. I know how the story is going to be structured. I know how like I know there's going to be flashbacks, and I know the mechanic I'm using to bring those flashbacks on screen. Different things like that. But like as far as like having a script, no, I'll figure out the dialogue as it happens. I have like in my notebooks,
Sure.
I have like certain dialogue written down and stuff that's like important, but
Yeah, but
not
like
like
structurally, you've just got some bits here and there.
I just make it as I go.
Just make it as you
Like,
go, man.
Yeah.
Man, freestyle game design with Overbound Game Studios. I like it. Cool. Just sort of wrap up here. Like, I want to know what some of your favorite games are.
I really like Mass Effect. The first one mostly. Paper Mario, Thousand Year Door, although it's hard to go back to because it's so dang slow. I find that in my old age, I don't like games that take their time and have a lot of menus
Yeah.
or a lot of stoppage in gameplay. Really annoying. I mean, games like stopping you for stories every couple minutes. Or I also like Banjo Kazooie, like Sonic 3 and Knuckles, of course. I don't even think of that one because it's just like so obvious, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I was
Sonic
going to ask
3D.
favorite Sonic game. Would you say it's Three Knuckles?
Probably 3 and Knuckles, yeah.
I mean, it's the best one, so I'll accept your answer.
Yeah.
Sorry, microphone.
Like, I really, one game I really like is Spark the Electric Jester. I thought that game was really good.
Oh, really
Blake
cool.
Pepper.
Yeah, another fellow fan gamer turned pro type of thing. And again,
Yeah, that game.
a Sonic game that added combat.
Yeah, that game's really good. I really like that game. I got to play it again.
Yeah, it's a fun time. Did
And
you
I
play
like
the
Kirby
3D one?
games. No, I didn't. I haven't played the second. The second one, to be honest with you, I saw some screenshots for it or some of the cutscenes for it, and that kind of turned me off a little bit. But
Oh,
I haven't played the second or third one. I hear they're really good though.
it's cool to see sort of a game that's doing sort of the old school 3D Sonic style. That's more Adventure 2, Heroes, that type of
Yeah.
a non-boost 3D Sonic game. It's kind of refreshing to see, and just another individual's take on it.
Yeah, for sure. Sure, they're cool games. He develops things super fast, and he does a good job with them. And I love the first one.
I respect that man's output so much. He's just a machine. He's just pumping them out. That's so great. Yeah.
Compared to me, he does a lot of them.
Cool. What do you think makes games fun?
I don't know. I think you have to. I think the story plays a part of it. People say that it doesn't, but I think that there's a certain type of people that love the like rapid like puzzle type games, but I'm really trying to hook people with like story and interesting gameplay loops. So I guess for me, it's like good combat, good controls, a lot of agency, which is something I'm trying to add to in No More Robots. So like everything, kind of this idea that everything you think you should be able to do, you can do. That's probably a guiding philosophy of No More Robots is everything you think you can do, you should be able to do. For instance, if you play Castlevania 1, like, why can't I whip in any direction I want? The game just doesn't have it. But like, why, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the answer is it's an 8-bit game.
Yeah.
But like, we don't have those kind of limitations before. So why are you giving me a game where you can swing in one direction?
What year do you think we're seeing No More Robots?
Good question, but I don't really know. Probably within the next 2 years, it'll start really ramping up, and like I'll have like demos and trailers and stuff like that. Probably have another 5 years of development, honestly.
Cool. So maybe at the earliest 5 years from now, we may see a finished No More Robots.
Yeah, just like Time Twisted. It'll take a long time. But it won't be canceled. So
that's great.
That you can count on.
Cool. Yes. Bryce, thank you so much for talking to me. This has been fun.
Yeah, it was fun, Noah.
Where can they find you? Where can they find your stuff?
I'm on Twitter at Overbound. I also I'm on Twitter at GameFAQs Special. That's for my YouTube channel. I'm really trying to grow that YouTube channel, that GameFAQs Special, as you know. So if you want to go subscribe to that, I'd be super happy. And then I have my other YouTube account, which is Overbound as well. I don't have URLs for all this stuff, but if you type Overbound or GameFAQs Special in YouTube or Twitter, you should find me.
Perfect. Cool. And I'll have them all up in the notes
Cool,
and everything
thanks.
for everyone else as well. But yes, cool. Thank you so much. We'll see you all
Thanks,
later.
Noah. Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.